Well, LifeBlood, this is George G, and the time is right. Welcome to today's guest, strong and powerful Susan Marrufo. Susan, are you ready to do this?
I'm ready, George. Let's do this thing.
All right, let's go. Susan is the founder of the Samarasa Center and is most well known for teaching her wildly popular signature course, Yoga, Sex, and Death. Susan, excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal life, some more about your work, why you do what you do.
Why I do what I do. Well, this course, Yoga, Sex, and Death, mirrors my own journey over the past, I don't know, 15 years. I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time where I am now. It's rare that I'm here, but I happen to be here now. And I was working in advertising and I was married and I had just been living a life that was all the checks, one of those stories. All of these things that I was conditioned and taught to believe, like, this is what you do to live a happy life. You have this house and you have this husband and you have this job and all of these external things. And I had all of those things, was the good girl and did all the things I was supposed to do. And I was really unhappy and I was drinking a lot and doing a lot of self-destructive behaviors. And I had no idea why. I couldn't really put my finger on anything. And so I thought, well, I know what I have tried and I know that that hasn't worked. So I'm going to I'm going to throw myself out there into the unknown and start trying different things and see if maybe something out there can save me, can save this life of mine. And so I left and I quit my job in advertising and I sold my house. And my husband and I attempted to stay together at this time. But I moved out of the country and just got out of the life that I had lived for myself, created for myself. And at the time, was feeling very suffocated by, knowing it was a life I had created for myself. No one had done it but me. So I just started looking for answers internally instead of, externally as well, because I changed the whole external setting, but mainly so that I could have some quiet and some time to go inside. So I did, and that just sent me off on this journey of traveling the world and living in Asia, India, Thailand, and Europe and Mexico, and studying yoga. And the result of my journey and my yoga practice, which to me is very tied to my sexual self and my sexual healing and that path, as well as the practices that I have practiced deeply and learned and taught over the years for death and dying. So the curriculum just poured out of me, after my own journey. It just mirrored that and it poured out of me. And I thought, well, this is what I'm meant to be. This is what's meant to be moving through me. And I've been teaching it ever since. Of course, it changes the first time I taught it was in 2014, and it's changed and morphed, and there's been so many different variations of it over the years as my path has changed and I discover more about myself and the world and my practice and other people. So that's what I'm doing now. And it's a whole different life. Everything did change, internally, externally. And I just feel so thankful and so full of gratitude when I wake up in the morning these days.
Well, that's awesome. So you said it was 2014 when you essentially started your hero's journey.
Yes. Yeah. It's often likened, to the hero's journey. Yeah. 2014.
And
And
it turns out it wasn't Dallas's fault because
turns
you're
out, turns out, who would have thought? Or my ex-husband's, or, it seemed so real at the time, like the finger outward, the projection of my own mind onto other people. And so that is why I do what I do now, because I realize that fundamental learning or discovery that this world is just reflecting back to me my own mind and what's going on up here. And so that's what I work with people on, really. If we just whittle it down and get really to the heart of it, I help people work with their minds, because the mind is what is the cause of your experience of reality, like whatever is happening in the mind, in your mind. And so you change the mind, you change your world. The whole world changes. So that's what I do. I really work with beliefs and limiting beliefs, and we can call it all kinds of things. I call it mental yoga, call it self-inquiry. One of the main tools I use for it is something called the work of Byron Katie. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but
I have.
yeah. So I do a lot of self-inquiry in that way. And there's a lot of things we do, but not Dallas. It wasn't Dallas, and it wasn't my ex. But your 20s are tough, man.
For
Your
sure.
20s. There's
I think,
lots of
yeah, 20s were tough for sure. A lot of I was just thinking about this yesterday. I was writing about how Socrates talked about how the unexamined life is not worth living. And I feel like a lot of us, many of us, and this is myself included, feel as you feel we're trapped, and we realize, oh my gosh, I am doing all the things that were supposed to make me happy, that I thought were going to. I pursued and worked hard to get them, and now here I am in this prison of my own design, which makes it
yes.
extra sucky. So how do I break free? And the only way is to certainly go on a journey, but it doesn't need to be you're leaving your geography, but you do need to
Right.
figure out how to shift things up.
Yes. And and that's the thing, is I like to ground a lot of my teaching in the innocence, in the innocent nature of the mind, like how innocent it is. We don't know what we don't know,
Mm.
and we can't know it. And that's how it's innocent. It's like there's no way I could have done it differently. It was what was going on for me at the time, and it was honest in that way. I was honestly believing the thoughts in my mind. And that's really all any of us are ever doing, is just innocently believing the things that are moving through our minds without stopping to question it, or stopping to really look and slow down enough to notice what's happening in the mind, and how quickly I attached to the stories that are going through the mind. And so that's what was happening for me in my 20s. I'm thinking Dallas sucks, my husband sucks, everything, all of these people suck. And I just believe it. And I never was taught like how to, no one ever said, Susan, you don't have to believe everything that goes through your mind. So now I try to tell myself that, and other people if they're interested, and how to do that, like how to go through that process.
What kind of a weird thing, right? That just because the thoughts are in my brain or in my mind and I'm thinking them and I'm feeling doesn't make it true or accurate. But until I sort of have that wake up moment, then why would I do anything other than just assume that they're correct because they're mine?
That's it. No one had told me. And then I started my practice of meditation, and really just becoming, the word is awareness, just
Hmm.
aware of the thoughts. First of all, just becoming aware of what's going on in the mind, and being able to identify thoughts, because they happen so fast, for most of us, we're just like happening, happening, happening. And I call it like being dreamed. We're being dreamed. We're not doing it on purpose. I'm not sitting here like thinking, okay, I'm going to think this next, right? It's a happening. And in that way, it's innocent, because it's just, I'm being dreamed, past, future, past, future, past, future, and asleep to it. But then, and we can wake up and somebody comes along and helps us out. We get a good teacher, a good guide that's like, hey, stop. wake up. What's happening in your mind right now? And notice that it's just imagination. It's not actually the physical reality, like what's happening in the physical reality is usually there's not ever really a problem. It's just the story that we make about it.
Right.
And so, yeah.
And how does yoga fit in?
Well, that is yoga, really. I mean, yoga is the realization of your truest nature. And it's so yoga is who you would be without your story, who you would be without the story of past, future. And so that's what is underneath all of that. What is the thing that does not change? Because all of this stuff is temporary, right? All of this stuff has a beginning and an end, a birth and a death, a physical body, thoughts. All of that is temporary. So yoga is what is there something that does not change? The absolute, or some people would call it God. Yoga is a system for self-realization, capital S, self. And so yoga asks that question, who am I? Who am I? Meaning, who is that self, capital S, self? Who is, and that is the way that I help people. I mean, outside of asana, which is physical postures, we actually, I do yoga, the way that most of us do yoga when we think of that word yoga. And I also do yoga in this mental way, but meaning just to notice thoughts, identify thoughts, become aware of what's happening in the mind, and sit in contemplation and meditation for the realization of what you're not, so that you can realize the truth of what you are and who you are. And and so a lot of people separate mind and body. You hear that a lot, like mind, body, spirit. In my mind, it's the same. They're one and the same. They can't be separated. Mind, body go together. So if you work with the mind, body follows. It could be no other way. So I work with both. And to me, also, when you work with body, you work with mind, right? They're very bi-directional. They work together. So I wanted to clarify that, when I say mind, I'm not, for your listeners, for everyone listening out there, like when I say mind, I'm not making a hard separation or delineation between mind and body. To me, they are one and the same. You work with one, the other follows.
I love it. So the course, the Yoga, Sex, and Death course, there is the physical movement that most of
Yes.
us think about when we think about yoga.
Yes.
And then there's training which will teach me how to do the things that we've been talking about and then make it a consistent practice.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I basically help people understand some principles of yoga. And then we take those principles of yoga and apply them to sexuality, healing our sexual selves, looking at our sexual selves. And I mean like the psychological sexual self, and understanding what's blocking us from intimacy on all levels, not just physically, like true intimacy. And so you can see, I don't know, so that connection to yoga, it's the intimacy with God or source, whatever word works for you. It's different for everyone, but that intimacy with self, capital S, self. And then once that's there, okay, how do I translate that to others, bring others in? And then ultimately we get into death. And death in the metaphorical sense, like death of the ego, as well as the big let go of death of the physical body. So it's not just ego death that we're talking about, but we do go through the Tibetan Buddhist practices for what happens when, what that tradition says happens when the physical body dies. And we get into why somebody would want to be prepared for that. For me, it's like the ultimate thing. It's at the heart of my life. Like, let's prepare now. That's what this life is about. And one of the ways we do that is exactly with what I'm talking about, Georgia, like this, who am I without my story? It goes so deep, and it feels sometimes like a death to let go of this person that I think I know, like, this is who I am. This is the life, this life, this body, these people, this is who I am. And we question all of those things. And to do that can feel very scary and confronting, but also on the other side of it is, oh my goodness, freedom and peace and love, all of the things.
So who am I? I am, oh, I grew up here. I did this thing, and then I went to this school, and now I did
Yes.
this work, and I'm involved with these things. Well, no, that's not who you are. Those are just things that you've done. Let's actually explore and peel back the things that you've done and remove your story from who you actually are.
Yes. For, you know, I feel like a very inclusive way that feels a little gentler for me is to say, okay, and you are these things,
Mm.
and, you know, so because there's different perspectives from different spiritual traditions and yogic traditions that get into these, you are not the body, and some say, yes, you are. And from a tantric perspective, the tantric perspective would say, I am these things also, and there's more to the story. That's not the period at the end of the sentence. These things are real, and it is, and there's more. And the truest part, you know, meaning the thing that does not die. What is that? And let's know that, because most of us are very well versed in knowing all of this, like who I am in terms of my name and my body and my job and where I live and all of those things. Most of us have that down. So this is about, now let's look a little deeper.
That's a much more delicate and nuanced and appropriate way to say what I did. So thank you.
I'm with you though. I'm with you. I mean, I that is it.
The thinking about your actual death, does that help to does that help also inform perspective? If I face and come to terms, or if that's the right term or not? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yes. Yes. Well, it has for me. And so that is the experience that I speak to. And I'm curious about what about you, for you? When you think about death, your own death, how do you feel? What does it do for you? Does it do anything?
I think about it, and I think about it almost every day. I visualize it, and I
Wow.
try and use it as a tool to hasten my actions and to give myself a greater sense of urgency and importance for what I'm doing.
Yeah. Amazing. I got goosebumps. I do it every
Mm.
day. It's so rare that I hear that, because death is often something that is scary for us to talk about. And um you can speak to this, and I imagine that it is a practice that does put things into perspective in your life and also creates a certain kind of freedom, because when you confront this fear of death and work with it and stay in relationship with it, it can't help but change everything in your life, because there's a certain freedom that comes with the relieving of that fear. It's like, wow, my life opens up, because that fear of dying is no longer there. But it does really put things into perspective. And I feel like there's so many lessons in death that are lessons for life. There's a book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche.
Hmm.
And I've carried that book with me for years. I travel so much, and it's like one of the books that I just have carried with me. And the reason that I carry it with me is because I feel like it's a manual for life. And when people say to me, it's Susan, like, this is so morose. You're thinking about death all the time. And I don't feel that way. Like, I feel like I have a manual for life, because there's so much that death has to teach us about life. I mean, a concrete example I'll give you is because it's fresh of mind. I was talking about it just a couple days ago. Two things that the tradition says, a gift you can give somebody who's dying, is to say two things to them before they die. And one is, I give you permission. I give you permission to die. And two, I'll be okay. Ah, and it's so moving to me to hear those words. And I think that there's so much for me, at least, to learn about that in life. Because how often do we hold on to people, or hold on to our ideas about what people should do and how they should be, because they need to take care of us emotionally in some way. And how loving it feels to be able to let somebody go. I mean, for their own sake. And that really feels like love to me. And I feel like that's just something that I work with in life. So that's just a small example of how studying death and what happens when you die can help you in life, in your relating, in your intimacy with others, and your intimacy with yourself. So
I love it.
yeah,
I think that that's super
it's
powerful and
yeah.
very bold of that human being to have titled the book that they wrote, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. So I appreciate audacity.
Yeah.
When am I going to write this? I know.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. You should, read it, see what you think. It's
I will
amazing.
absolutely pick up a copy of it. I wrote it down. I will pick it up and we'll do a follow up, Susan.
Yeah, we should. I would love it. I would love to join you again. We could
Well,
talk all about it.
perfect. Well, Susan, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you, the Samarasa Center, and where can they do or find the course, Yoga, Sex, and Death?
So you can go to samarasacenter.com, and also our Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram because we post, it's very current. Our website is as well. I offer yoga, sex, and death as level 1. It is in retreat form, intensive retreat form. You can also do it as a 6-week course. There's one happening in January in LA with an amazing facilitator that I've trained over years to do this work. And you can also take Yoga, Sex, and Death as an online self-paced course. It's called Yoga, Sex, and Death Basics. So there's a few different entry points into how to take Yoga, Sex, and Death, depending on what you're ready for. And then I have a YSD level 2, a Yoga, Sex, and Death level 2 for those people who are wanting to go deeper. And those are 8 modules over 8 months. And then there's Yoga, Sex, and Death Level 3, which is the facilitator training. You can find all of that information on samarasacenter.com. And you can stay up to date. You can also sign up for our newsletter through our Instagram profile. So please do. I just, there's nothing that fulfills me more than to hold this container for people willing to go inside
Awesome.
and do their deep work. Yeah.
Love it. If you enjoyed this as much as
George.
I did, share Susan your appreciation and share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to samarasacenter.com, Samarasa center.com, and check out everything that we've been talking about today. And then follow Susan and the Samarasa Center on Instagram as well. I'll certainly link all those in the notes of the show. Thanks again, Susan.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you. And until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.